Todd Miller here from Warrior Concepts. Remember, Warrior Concepts, where we teach students how to master themselves and master their lives using the time-tested and proven the ancient. What is that doing? I don't think we've ever had that happen. Hold on one second. Goodness, that's terrible. Maybe that'll work. Let's see. Excellent. Sorry about that. All right, so maybe we'll edit that out. Who knows? All right, anyway, Dai-Shihan Miller here from Warrior Concepts, where we teach our students the time-tested and proven lessons from the ancient samurai and ninja, bringing them forward in the 21st century, right? And these are the lessons designed, again, if you're looking at the full scope of the art, the lessons designed to allow you to create the life you've always dreamed of living, and those lessons that will allow you to protect that life from anything that might harm it or threaten to harm it, right? Anyway, so you're here for Whiteboard Wednesday, right? So if you're on live, great. And if not, well, you're watching a recording, right? But weekly Whiteboard Wednesday, this is part 2 in a 2-part series that I started last episode. And so what we looked at last time was this idea of combat striking for street defense, right? We want to end something in 10 seconds or less, 4 moves or less, that kind of thing. In all honesty, when I get finished with that, I have a whole schedule of things that I'm doing week by week for you guys. And there was so much more that I could have covered. And so here we are, right? I decided I needed to throw something else in there, right? So today we're going to be taking a look at this idea. I've got 5 principles for you to end a fight in 10 seconds or less, okay? And I know there's all kinds of outlandish, promises online and all that kind of stuff. But this is, again, or springboarding or leapfrogging or whatever off of last week's, where we took a look at things like the amount of glycogen storage you have in your muscles for a quick down and dirty, you got to go, right? How things are different on the street where we need to end things quickly, or on a battlefield or back alley or whatever. And it's not the same in a sport contest, right? So I'm not rehashing all that stuff. So if you're scoffing or whatever, right? Go back and take a look at the other episode. That's fine with me, right? Again, a lot of people look at this thing too and they go, see, here's somebody making promises. But you know what? Here's something too, right? We need to understand our own psychology. Right? This just happened last night with my long distance guys, right? We were on for our weekly inner circle coaching call, and I was covering some kicking, right? Snap kick and a stomp kick, and not just mechanically, right, but historically where they came from, why they developed, tactically why you would use one over another, that kind of thing. And several people that jumped on the call, right, sometimes they're on, sometimes they're not, actually admitted that it was the topic that got them to come, right? So sometimes I need to title these things in a way that make people actually get off their asses and actually join in on a class. This doesn't make it not true, okay? Again, springboarding off of last week, 10 seconds or less, 4 moves or less, 10 seconds being just under the cap for a really healthy person when it comes to glycogen stores in the muscles, right? You need to go all out, right? Let's say you're jogging, right? You decide to do a wind sprint. You got about 7 to 11 seconds, right, of muscle stores of sugar that allow you to do that before you need to go back to a jogging pace or a fast walk or whatever, right? Or whatever your normal stride is. And that gives the body time to put that back in, and then you can go again. This is no different than in a survival situation, right? Everybody likes to talk about the fight, flight, or freeze mechanism when the adrenals let go. And yes, that happens, but what do the adrenals do to the cells or to the muscles in the system at a cellular level, right, that makes things happen? Well, they get them to reach into their stores and go, especially with the muscles, right? So glycogen is a type of sugar, whatever, okay? So if we train to operate within this window, if we can do more, right? Let's say we ran or we hit or whatever, that's letting things recharge, or we're able to navigate and maneuver around, right? So that we don't have to go all out, right? We can maneuver around, keep objects between he and I, that kind of thing, right? Of course, the fight can go, or the attack can go longer, whatever, right? But if they're right on this, it's right, it's all out, and we need to do that. We need to take care of what needs to be taken care of. Okay. All right. So I've got 5 principles for you today. Just one of these, right? 5 principles. Okay. And we're going to get down and dirty with this. Okay. We need to start in a place where we need to get it, that this is about survival and not about, bragging rights or points or whatever. Okay? So we're gonna go there. I've got 5 of these, and then at the end, if you stick around to the end, I have a bonus lesson where we're going to cover just very, very quickly, simple points to remember for handling a surprise attack. Okay, and we're going to talk about the difference, right? We need to understand physiologically, psychologically, a lot of these things that are going on, and if we miss these things, right, then our training is not going to serve us to the degree that we want it to serve us or that we think it's going to. Okay, so we need to be careful with that. All right, so let's jump into this, right? The very first point is attitude. Okay, attitude. Right? I had a class last night with my black belts and what I call my Shinobi Kai group. These are people of whatever rank level that they kind of pay a premium for tuition, and they can train and work on all kinds of things. Right? They're actually looking at black belt stuff. Now they have their other classes that they come to, but this stuff puts things in perspective so that in their regular classes on their curriculum and whatever they're doing for the next rank, right, they don't take this stuff for granted, right, because they see where things need to go. Okay, and so there were some things that I needed to point out last night that people were doing in their training, and these are my students, right? So imagine what people are doing that aren't getting these lessons, right? So these are my students, and I had to keep reminding them, right, of things that they're doing when they're practicing. And I could see it from across the room, right? How they're disengaging psychologically too early, or they're not engaged soon enough, or whatever, right? It's like somebody flips a switch, technique happens, flips the switch, technique's over. So we'll talk about that here quickly, right? So attitude, there's a lot of stuff that goes into this, right? And I'm not necessarily talking about the attitude in the fight. I am, but this all starts back at training, right? And while some of this stuff may seem like it's a dumb moment, like it, there's a difference between knowing something intellectually where you can regurgitate it back and you can parrot the teacher's lessons, and it's a completely different story if you're not actually doing it on the training floor, or you're not actually doing it when you walk out of the dojo. I see this all the time, right? Here in Japan, all that, right? Not knocking anybody, but right, we're either training for real life or we're training for some other benefit this is supposed to give us, making us feel all warm and fuzzy or whatever. Anyway, all right. So number 1, right? We're going to train like our life depends on it. See, I told you it was going to sound obvious, right? But here's what I need to think about. I want you to train as though your life depends on more than winning a trophy or getting a belt or a chance to get a do-over. Okay? If those are possibilities at the end, then it's not a survival situation. Right? What if you trained as though the consequences of failure were being disabled, maimed, or dead? Okay? And it's one thing to talk about it. It's another thing to make sure that you understand things that make the difference. Okay? And I get it. Being a tough guy, I'll just eat a bullet from across the street too. Okay? If you're not taking that into account, or the revenge they might have for you afterwards or whatever, then you're not really considering self-defense and survival, right? You're just talking about winning a fight. Right? Anybody can win a fight. Hell, you can luck out and win a fight, land the shot just right, knock him out, watch MMA matches and boxing matches, and seriously watch strategy and tactics, and tell me that you don't see more often than people would like to admit that the guy won. Oh, it was an awesome shot. You see he landed a lucky shot because he was throwing a whole bunch and one just happened to hit at just the right angle at just the right time. Okay, come on, man. All right, so that goes into this other thing, right? Because I had to point this stuff out to people last night, right? Stop trying to win points, or stop trying to score points. Okay, stop training as though it's about points. Stop training as though it's about winning something. And I know that goes to the first one, right? Here's some points from last night's class that these things were glaringly obvious, and I had to keep repeating myself. All right. First one was to stop disconnecting at the end of a technique. Okay. as though that's the end of the attack. Okay? Remember the technique. I covered this last week. The technique is not the fight. Okay? So just because the technique starts here and ends here, all we're looking at is a snapshot in time. Okay? There's nothing stated or implied in the scrolls that this is the whole fight. There's always the implication that something probably came before that moment that was a start point of this technique. And if it doesn't conclude the way it's supposed to, something will continue. So stop training as though the technique is the fight. And I can see people disconnecting. As soon as they were starting to get that throw in there, or they were starting to get that last part of the technique, I can watch it in their eyes. They're already disconnecting mentally. Okay? And I can also see when they're setting up, right? They approach their partner, and then, like, seriously, that's how fights start? That's how somebody attacks you? Okay? How about as you're entering that space, you're almost at the edge of the kukan, and before your body even starts to adjust to that, your head and your awareness expands to pay attention to their movements, their shape, their posturing, that kind of stuff. Okay? Yeah, I'll talk about this later, but when we're in the dojo, we're not just training physical skills. There's mental skills that have to be trained as well, and they have to be turned on and off, just like kamae and all these other things. All right. So stop what I had there, right? So stop disconnecting. Stop disconnecting too soon. Okay. Next one, stop acting like your training partner is your friend. Okay? They are, I get it, they are, right? But your training partner is playing the role. They're a surrogate for an actual attacker on the street. Now, I don't mean you go ground and pound on your training partner. What I mean is, and one of the reasons why we train slowly, whatever, is because we're driving through the target. We're hitting that target that if we do it at speed or even half to 3/4 speed, we're going to disconnect some shit and they're going off to the hospital or the morgue, right? But when we're acting this thing out, right, we need to train as though this isn't John, my friend. This isn't, where's somebody got here? This isn't Phil or whatever, right? This is somebody actually coming at me, right? So one of the things that one of my teachers used to have us do is almost like a pretend kind of thing, but you need to believe it to the greatest degree you can, right? And that is, if he touches me, I will break or die. And if I'm playing this little game, right, kind of like a hot hands kind of thing, right? If he tags me, right, I will break or die. So I can't let him get me, kind of thing, right? And so that already starts to activate the adrenals a little bit, right? Hypothalamus, all kinds of stuff are going on. The amygdala lights up, right? So we need to put a little bit more realism in our training. But again, I don't mean speed and breaking your partner. What I mean is getting your head in the damn game. Okay? Once you learn the technique, step by step by step, great. Now, there's other things that we need to start to be paying attention to. Okay? So stop acting like your training partner is your friend. How about we say, stop acting like you're defending against a friend. Okay? And the last one was, stop training like you're just training. I understand we're all having a good time. Okay? What's the goal of training? What am I trying to accomplish here? Okay? Stop training like you're just training. Okay? Training like you're just training is just a fun activity. It's just neat exercise, right? You could be at the racquetball court, you could be on the golf course, whatever, right? What's the purpose, right? What are we doing while we're training, while we're practicing? Okay? So this is like meditation, right? People often think that meditation is just sitting in a place, putting your hands in a certain place, right? Breathing, visualizing, or whatever. But with meditation, what you're doing is you're highlighting a certain function of mind, or in a given meditation exercise, you might transition from function to function. These are functions that you use every day: focusing, observing or following, visualizing, assessing, whatever, right? And so when we're doing meditation, we're actually putting ourselves in a certain state of mind and practicing to focus and use that state of mind to hone it so it gets better. It's the same thing with your training, right? So just like a meditation exercise, I've often called those kata for the mind. It's no different, okay? So we're honing body responses, actions, thoughts, and those things like that so that they will operate better under pressure in a bad situation, okay? So again, I said this before, in the dojo, unless you're just starting out and somebody's like helping you put your body in a certain position or whatever, right? Okay. Or you're just the first time you were given a kata, step 1, step 2, where's my foot go? Where's my hand go? Whatever. Okay. You're not just training physical skills, right? You're also training mental skills, and you're also trying to control. When I say heart, I mean like your emotional responses and things like that, right? Because again, these things are happening, right? The amygdala is lit up. It's sending signals to the hypothalamus. It's dropping a bunch of chemicals to your system. You're in an altered state, okay? So if you're training just for fun, or you're training just for training, then you're not training to operate in the state that you will be in when your life is, okay? What's that saying from the Bible? The wages of sin are death. Okay? I know everybody likes to parrot that, the ones who know it, okay? But what's a sin? Okay? It's an old archer's term that means to miss your mark. And of course, if an archer consistently misses his target and they're returning volleys, it's going to die. Okay? How about that for a military connector? Right? You actually find that in Romans, which is an actual, like an outline for how to amass an army for a war. All right, so I know I've got weird hobbies, don't I? Okay, that's number 1. Okay, have anything else in my notes for number 1? Oh, I do, right? Okay, so this is a lesson from Matsumi Sensei a long time ago. Okay, the suggestion was that people, regardless of whatever their rank level is, right? It doesn't matter the color of their belt, the number behind that color, whatever, right? So you need to find people with real world attack, fight kind of experience. Okay, you can talk to people that are in the ring and whatnot, and they can help, right? But I'm talking about like bouncers, cops, people that have been on a battlefield or whatever. Okay, and his point was they may not be able to tell you how to do any given kata in your system, or they may not know as many techniques as you or whatever. So they may not be able to tell you how to do this thing. But what they can tell you that somebody without experience cannot, even if they're parroting, right? There's certain things they're going to leave out. What they can tell you is how you better be training because they know what it's like inside that bubble. Okay? All right. So, and then the other thing too is to learn as much as you can about how and what makes the body work the way it does, right? So that you can protect yours and you can shut his down as quickly as possible, right? I started that theme last episode. No different now. Quickly, effectively, and efficiently. Okay? Quickly, effectively, and efficiently. Right? So, and the last one for this one, and I'm going to come back to this later, because this is in a different place, but this is the attitude inside the fight. Okay? Fight like a demon. Okay? One of our 9 schools in the Bujinkan is Kukishinden school. Kukishinden Ryu, right? Kukishin, right? Kuki is 9 demon, or Kukishinden, right? 9 demon gods. Okay? There's a whole story from way back. The guy was the acknowledged founder. It was quite accidentally. He didn't mean to found anything, right? People came up on him defending against a whole like mini army of bodyguards and all that kind of stuff because somebody had been kidnapped. He and his friend went in to save him. He was a master of the spear, right? And watching him take people down, right, and the ferociousness and things like that was going on, they said he was fighting like 9 demon gods. And the name stuck, okay? But you need to fight like a demon, right? So if you've ever heard the phrase, fight like you're the third monkey trying to get on Noah's Ark and it's starting to rain, right? That kind of attitude, right? I don't think about winning and I don't think about losing. I just think about shutting down the problem that's in front of me, okay? And I keep doing that until I don't have to do it anymore. That could be because I won and all the threats are neutralized, or it could be because I'm dead. But I do that until it's not necessary anymore. Okay. So this is not the same as thinking about winning and losing, because if you think about winning and losing, right, you're going to be worried about both, right? And they're going to get in the way. Mentally, they're going to get in the way. Right. Sorry about that. Just readjusting my notes here, right? I don't want to miss anything, right? So we're going to come back to this one. All right. So some of these things cross lines, right? Number 2, right? Second principle, angling, right? And do I have angling or angle? Angles, right? Angles, all right? So one of the primary principles in the Koto school is strikes are delivered at a 45-degree angle. Okay, we don't just move our body 45 degrees, but strikes are done 45 degrees up or down. Gyokuryu has these pendulum things. We learned that in Sanchi, right? But these strikes drive down, right? Because the body responds to these things, right? We'll talk about this here in a minute. But the way, not just the fact that we hit them, but the way we hit them causes their body to act a certain way, okay? And since I want them on the ground, then I need to strike through. One of the things I was taught as a white belt was the angle of the strike, whether it's a stow or whatever, I'm hitting the arm, or I'm hitting through the ribs or whatever, is the fist at the end of the strike should be pointing at the ground where I want them to be laying. Okay? So because the strike itself, just like in grappling, again, way too many people operate like these things that are vacuum, right? Grappling's grappling, striking is striking. No, there's lots of crossover. And one of those is that I'm breaking more than one line of balance at the same time, even with my strikes. I know lots of people just want to land strikes and whatever, and I get it. But again, just like I talked about last time, have you ever seen a fight? How many times does somebody have to get hit in the head before they get dizzy and drop? If you've ever been in a fight, how many times have you been hit in the head? Okay? So stop hitting freaking the same targets everybody else is going after and learn from stuff like that, right? This is part of learning how the body works, right? All right. So 45 degrees, right? For today, I'm going to talk about 45 degrees down, right? To down them. I want them down, so I'm going to strike to down them, and I want them down quickly. So I want to drive through the target, and I want to hit down. If I'm hitting the arm, I'm going to hit through it and down. If I'm hitting through the ribs, same thing. If I'm hitting through the koi, right, this hip connection with a leg plugs into the torso, hitting down, right? Even if I'm hitting the face, I'm going to hit down, right? So it locks things down. It either locks up the skeleton or it drives their ass into the ground, okay? So 45 degrees down. I want to target unseen points. Natsumi Sensei always called these target unseen points. Right? They're hidden. Okay? He probably knows he has them, right? But what they are blind spots. Okay? So if he throws a punch, right, I can go after things where his arm is going to be between his eyes and where my arm is, so he'll never see the shot coming. Okay? So I want to go after these things, and I want to make his body's reflexive system, his flinch response. I want to make his reflexive system work for me. Okay. General George Patton, way back in World War II, was known to tell soldiers that their job was not to die for their country, which is a common misnomer for soldiers, right? Okay. Your job is not to die for your country. It's to make the other poor son of a bitch die for his. Okay. So what my teachers taught me was your job isn't to win this fight. Okay. It's to not be an accomplice to your own ass kicking while making him an accomplice to his. Okay. So how do I do that? Well, we can psychologically try to manipulate, trick him and all that, or we could just start at the basics where I'm using flinch response, right, to make things happen. And the cool thing about flinch response is I don't actually have to land the punch. I can throw intent, and this is where feints and fakes and all that kind of stuff come from, right? The guy thinks you're going to hit him, but there's a difference between getting him to bob and weave because he thinks you're going to get him to hit, or you're going to hit him, or he's going to like kind of pull away a little bit. And you're actually striking in a way that the body moves the same way because the body moves. How's the body move? 180 degrees away from the impact, from the danger, the damage, or the perceived threat, right? So it moves 180 degrees away from that. So I don't actually have to land shots. Like I can hit here to make him do this, or I can strike in where he can see it and he'll move. I don't care. I know everybody's going after the damage and the pain, but if my goal is to hit him with that first one so he locks up, then I can slam him with the next one because he can't move. I don't need pain, right? I need to lock him up so I can knock his ass out. Okay, people need to prioritize. Okay, so again, angles, right? So let's this thing here is going to be related to speed, but it's not speed. I mean, it is, but it's still primarily angles. I want you to think about this. Okay, which one will you travel faster? A straight line or an arc? Okay, straight lines, except on a globe, right? That's why planes, when you're flying around the country, it looks like if you look at a flat map, it looks like the flight paths are this way, right? It's because if they fly around the globe, the contour of the globe, it actually takes longer, eats up more gas and all that, or fuel and whatnot, right? So here's the idea: straight lines are shorter than arcs. Arcs, not orcs. Okay, right? So straight lines are faster than arcs. If you have to be faster, right? If you have to be faster to make your fist connect or your technique work, then it's either one of three things, right? The technique is either too complicated. Okay? You know the KISS rule, right? Okay? Keep it simple, Shinobi. You thought I was going to say stupid. Okay? Nobody that signs on to these things are stupid. People that don't have the aptitude or the mental intellect or whatever to do tactical and strategic work to gain an advantage would never watch one of these things for no more than a couple of seconds. And I know that because when it first starts, I got a little counter on my screen right here, right? It goes up and immediately people start dropping off. And the reason is there's not a trained monkey demonstrating something for them while they're binge watching YouTube or scrolling on their damn phone. Okay? So count yourself among the people that had the potential of making this stuff work for you, right? But if I have to go really fast, if I have to train for speed, then my technique is either too damn complicated, right? Or you're too far away from him. Distance is off. Okay? So if I go too far back, whatever space I create, I have to make up for on the way back in. Okay? Got a problem with that, right? Time is distance. Right? How many Whiteboard Wednesdays have I pointed that out in? Time is distance. Okay? And the last one is, or you're not good enough. And probably not you, but I'm not going to write it all out. You're not good enough with the technique you're trying to do to make it work when it needs to on the street against somebody trying to kill you. Doesn't mean that you don't like it. Doesn't mean it's not cool. Doesn't mean anything like that. Doesn't mean you're not working on it. Okay? But let's think about this. Okay? You need to stay with techniques that you are just smooth as glass with, because you don't have time to be trying something when your life is on the line, somebody else's life is on the line. Okay? No matter how much you like that technique, or no matter how much it's your favorite. You know what I was told by the Japanese instructors? You're not allowed to have favorites. You're not allowed to have a favorite side. You're not allowed to have favorite techniques, or whatever. Okay? Because you'll lean in those directions and you get your ass kicked. Okay? You have to be equally good on both sides, because you never know where an attack is going to come from or which side has to apply that technique. Right? So no excuses, no reasons, no bullshit. Nobody cares. Okay? The bad guy actually hopes that you suck. And God help you if you're attacked by somebody that knows you well. If I were ever attacking somebody that I know well, If you don't think that I'm going to come at them on their weak side and force them to use their weak side, you're high. Because this is not about bragging rights. This is about, I'm going to end this quickly. And if I can end it quickly, but making you use your crippled side, and you did that on purpose, well, that's not my fault. Okay? So there's angles, right? Let's jump to number 3 and keep moving here, right? Free training, and I'm throwing a lot at you, but I'm not going into all the details. Okay? I'm giving you plenty to work with. You should be able to fill your notebook and then go from there. Right? Number 3. Right? Number 3 is speed, not the drug. Okay? Speed. In this martial art, speed, just like strength is not based on muscle mass, strength is based on leverage and positioning. Okay? Speed is not based on how fast you can move your limbs. It's how directly you can move things and how easily you can move things so that you're not in your own way, right? If your balance is compromised, those kind of things, you can't move quickly. If you're using all this dynamic tension where you have to relax a lot to go to the next point, if you have to wind up to get to the next piece, right? The longer it takes to get the weapon surface from point A to point landing, the longer it takes, the more time he has to catch his balance, reestablish, block whatever you're doing, move, hit you, right? You don't have that kind of time, right? So I'm gonna revisit this one again too, okay? Be an opportunist. Okay? Be an opportunist, right? Get your fist as close to the target as possible before you start the strike. Okay? It's not something I made up. Okay? If you I've read Hakuin Sensei's book, Togakure ryu Ninpo, it was translated a long time ago, right? It became like the instructor scroll, okay? In the chapter on striking, to strike faster, you minimize the distance between the fist or the weapon you're using and the target you want to hit before you launch the attack. Now it's too fast for him to see coming. Okay? So that's why when this punch comes in, I shift, let that punch go by. I'm not just letting the punch go by, the ribs are getting really close. And it's a whole lot easier to hit him without him responding from here than it is when that punch comes in to move over here. Fist is here, then I need to step in and hit that shot, right? It's not a good idea, okay? All right, 2, we're going to position our hands. Let's just make this limbs, right? Position our hands and limbs so that they can access choice targets easily. This comes through knowing your kamae, right? Knowing this part of your kamae. Why are kamae created the way they are? If you're a stylist-oriented kind of person, well, that's the way the Koto Ryu does it. Well, that's just the way it's done. Well, then you don't understand anything because the kamae were developed based on the strategies. Kamae are tactics, right? They're the things that allow for you to execute your technique quicker, easier, more effectively, more efficiently, because it already puts certain things in the right places to protect targets and to have your hands where they need to be, or your legs where they need to be, to execute the technique you're doing. Why do you think some techniques start with Jumonji? Some techniques start with Doko. Some techniques start. Look at the technique. What is it that you're doing? Okay? Right? So position your hands and your limbs so that it's easier to access the target. If I'm doing a throat punch, I'm not going to be moving around like this, especially against somebody else who moves around like this. If I'm dealing with somebody like this, my hands are typically going to be lower so that it's easier to access those things and cover on the way through. Because if I do this, it's equally hard for me to hit him as it is for him to hit me because we're matching things. You need to learn to match by being the complementing opposite of what he's setting up. So do you know which kamae is going to work better against the Thai boxer? Do you know which kamae is going to work better against the Taekwondo guy who's going to try to use reach in that leg to get you? Do you know which kamae is going to work best against a shoot fighter or whatever? Okay? Just a thought, right? You probably do. All right. Number 3 is maintain proper posture. Posture, which obviously is all about balance, right? posture and balance, so you can move the body and the limbs freely and as quickly as possible. If you're off balance and your body is fighting gravity, you're not going to be able to do things very, very fast. Okay, if you're like hunched this way, right, and you need to hit something that's over there, it's going to be harder because all your posterior muscles are firing to keep you from falling over. And if you don't believe that, I challenge you to get into that fight pose that you use where your head is forward and down, your shoulders are rolled, and then disengage your back muscles and see if you don't automatically start falling forward. Okay? We did a class last night with the black belts, the Shobi guy, and the virtual guys. Sign up for last night was Tuesday, so you wouldn't be on that if you just did the a la carte Friday things. You'd have to be in the full virtual program to do that. But there was a technique that we did against a hook punch where it just shifted around and outside, and then right there, just pick up the leg and snap his lead leg. But there's no wind up to it. One of the hardest parts that my students in class had to do was because when they back out, they're in kind of some weird position, and then they have to move their torso to move the leg. Well, now he's regaining his balance, and the fight keeps going longer, and you're going to be well outside that 10-second rule. All right? So the idea is if you can't, again, this is something, I got all this stuff at white belt, right? If you can't step or kick quickly and easily without moving the torso first, they weren't so nice back in the early 80s, okay? Your comment sucks, okay? Nobody gives a shit what it looks like, okay? This is not a fashion show, okay? If you cannot step or kick with one leg without moving the torso first, there'll be incidental movement of the torso because you're moving your leg or whatever, right? But I'm talking about having to move the torso to shift the weight so you can move the leg. If you have to do that, you're now doing 2 or more moves to launch the kick or to step. And if he's only using one, if he's fast, right? If he's one move and the punch is coming, and it takes you more than one move to move, you don't have to be bad at balancing your checkbook to know that that's just bad math, right? It's just bad math, right? So here was a question that a teacher asked a long time ago, and I ask my students all the time. Can you do this punch, this kick, or this technique, whatever one we're talking about, can you do it quickly when you're ill, injured, old, or weak? Anybody can do shit when they're healthy, vibrant, well caffeinated, whatever. Okay? Can you do it? Right? Those are the techniques that are going to save your life when bad shit's happening. All right? Okay, so that's number 3. Number 4, Kyusho. We have at least one Whiteboard Wednesday, if not more, on Kyusho. Right? Kyusho. For the new guys in the group, because everybody else should know this, Kyusho does not mean pressure points. Pressure points don't even mean pressure points. See, it's what happens when the blind lead the blind, right? Somebody learns something, and then they just keep passing that thing on, but did they learn that thing, or is that how they translated it, and now it becomes a wall that nobody can get past and actually do better with, right? Kyusho means weak points. Kyusho means weak points, right? Go back and find the Whiteboard Wednesday episode about Kyusho because I cover 5 different Kyusho. We drop one because it has to do with the same pressure points for health and healing, but the other 4 pressure points are only one of those, okay? But there are 4 different types of weak points on the body that you can exploit, okay? So we want to target weak points. Everybody brags about having read Sun Tzu's Art of War. Okay? I want to know if they learned anything from Sun Tzu's Art of War, or if they just nodded their head like, well, that's cool, or, oh, bad. Okay? How many people have read Sun Tzu's Art of War, isolated a couple of little things, and then make sure you're doing that in your training? Okay? One of the chapters in Sun Tzu's Art of War, it's the art or the strategy of using strong points against weak points. Okay? For those of you in Ninjutsu, right, and you understand Togakure school, right, we have this one fist called Shishinken. It's any single finger or knuckle, Okay. Finger needle, Shishinken. Okay. Most people scoff at that. How can you hit with that? Eyeballs, throat. There's lots of targets that this is used for, right? But the target has to be weaker than this. See, the problem is when people think like cavemen or cave women, right? And they're just thugging it and hitting whatever, then they're going to scoff at this because they always think about hitting the same damn targets everybody else thinks of. Well, that's just stupid. Okay? We already talked about that. Stop targeting things that everybody else is going after. Okay? You go after the same things everybody else goes after. You after the same thing that he's paying attention to. He's already covering that stuff. Right? We'll talk about that here in a minute. Okay? So, well, as a matter of fact, that's where I am now, right? So stop going after the same targets everybody else does. Stop playing this game of I'm willing to take one to get one. Okay? I'm willing to trade shots. Right? Because now you're hoping. Right? You're hoping he doesn't land that lucky shot, and you can't stop him from doing anything to you after you're unconscientious. I know the word's unconscious. Relax. Okay? So here's the thing to remember. You're going to take plenty in an attack. Right? You're going to take plenty. You're in a fight. Right? One of the questions that my students have in their testing packets is, what's one thing you can guarantee if you're facing somebody who's armed with a knife? You're going to get stabbed or cut. Your job is not to not get stabbed or cut. Your job is to not get stabbed or cut to the degree that the TV gets turned off. It's the same thing with getting punched, same thing with getting kicked and all that, right? So you're going to take plenty. We don't have to play the I'm willing to take one to get one, right? You're going to take some, right? But it shouldn't be because of stupidity or ignorance. You know the difference? Ignorance is not knowing any better. Stupidity, that's your choice. Holy shit. Really? I want to see if my head's harder than yours or my brain can take more than yours can. Right? No, I'm going to break this guy down. I can go to his brain after he can't stop me. Okay? All right. Just like we talked about last time, shut his body down. This doesn't mean you need to kill him. But if I snap his knee, if I snap his leg out from under him, right, or I disconnect something and he passes out, okay, then his body cannot get at me. One of the main points of last episode was I break his body down as quickly, effectively, and efficiently as possible so he can't get at me to do any harm, even if he still wants to. I think the analogy I made was, for those of you who know Monty Python, Old English acting troupe and whatnot, right? They had this movie called Monty Python's Search for the Holy Grail, right? And there was this battle with the Black Knight. It's really, really funny, right? Even at the end, the Black Knight is still talking smack. Come back here, I'll bite your kneecaps off. Except he's lost his arms and his legs. He can't do shit. All he's doing is talking smack. So if I can render his body incapable of getting at me, right? If this guy's high on some kind of drugs where he can't feel the pain, right? Doesn't matter if it's, he's cut, he's shot, whatever. Before I became a police officer, I was a Boy Scout. I know they're called, what are they called? Guys, I don't know, something like that, right? Boy Scouts here in the States. And I crossed over to this part of Boy Scouts that was called exploring, right? So medical exploring, adventure exploring. I happened to join a group that was law enforcement exploring. It was hosted by the local, or sponsored by the local police department, okay? And we were learning about law enforcement, security, those kind of things. And there was this incident that happened. This guy and his friend robbed a bank locally and took off and ended up getting in a firefight with cops from 2 states and like 3 or 4 counties, right? In a cornfield, okay? He got shot up. I think he got shot something like 23 times. They were 38 caliber rounds, so not super fast, whatever, right? Made it to the end of this cornfield where his girlfriend picked him up, drove him to a hospital in Maryland, we're in Pennsylvania, right? Drove him to a hospital, and that's where he got arrested. He survived to go to jail. Okay? So never count your, as they used to say, never count your chickens, or count your chickens until they hatch, whatever, right? So intent, 10 has a lot, right? So if this guy still wants to get at you, he's going to get at you, right? The goal is not to beat him. The goal is to make sure he can't get at you, right? All right. So know the body. You know that old adage, know thyself? Know the human body. Right? You need to know how it's built, right? You need to know where it's weak, where it's strong, that kind of thing, right? And go there first. A bunch of years ago, for one of our annual Dai-Shihan seminars, the theme was how to beat an MMA fighter, right? Mixed martial artists, right? Shoot fighters, all these kind of guys, right? And the very first lesson of that seminar, I know I probably already pissed off a bunch of people because, right? Anyway, the first lesson, I handed everyone a worksheet that had 25 lines on it. I took this right off of MMA websites. These were the rules these are the things you weren't allowed to do in an MMA match. And in truth, there was way more than 25 because they stacked a bunch of things that were kind of related, but not really on the same line. So 0.7 might be joint locks, pressure points, whatever, right? And biting, right? All the same freaking line, right? So the lesson for the very first class, it was just a little extra thing, right? You dealing with somebody like this, you start with number one and you keep going down the list until one of them shuts him down. Because if you can't do it, again, if somebody's training for sports stuff, they're less likely to think about that stuff in an actual situation because we will fight the way we train. No amount of intellectual bullshit is going to change that. What's in subconscious memory, what's in muscle memory, the stuff you do the most is what you will do when the filters drop and you're on auto response, right? You're on autopilot. Okay. So again, people can bullshit themselves through it, but it's the way it is. And remember, the key for all this stuff is to end this damn fight as quickly as possible. Okay. 10 seconds or less, 5 seconds, whatever. Okay. But at this point right here, if you get to this point, the glycogen stores in your muscles have been depleted, and it's not that your body can't move, but it's going into a resting pattern and it's going to minimize things. Okay. So what you see in a fight is guys go at it, boom, 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 and then they back off and then they start dancing around and waiting for that. Because they're waiting for that second wind. They're waiting for the body to put the glycogen stores to go back in so they can go at it again. Right? If you understand how this stuff works, and this is a bonus because I didn't plan on doing this, right? If you understand those glycogen stores, that you can match your high point with his resting stage. Which means when he's coming at me, I cover everything that I can to conserve as much energy as possible. And as soon as I recognize that he goes into that holding pattern, I'm going to jump his ass. Or I'm going to take off in the opposite direction. Okay? Because I need high glycogen stores when I'm going at it, and I need to be protecting when my body's trying to put it back. Okay? The cool thing is this really works. The uncool thing is it works for the person who accidentally or intentionally is using it. Okay? So, and this again, that crossover with grappling and striking, right? I was taught this in a grappling context, but it's the same for striking. Okay. All right. So know the body, right? Again, this goes directly to Sun Tzu's Art of War, right? Using strong points against weak points, right? So here's a quick example for those of you in Bujinkan, in Ninjutsu training, that kind of stuff, right? We had this idea of uke nagash or uch, right? Covered this, 2 episodes ago, something like that, right? These different forms of quote unquote blocking, right? So people keep trying to go after the same targets, right? I'm trying to hit him in the head, trying to hit him in the ribs because I'm trying to shut the fight down quickly. Really? What's happening? Well, he's blocking, he's avoiding, he's parrying. Sometimes I land, sometimes I don't. Yeah. How about if you change your perspective? When he throws that punch and you move, how about if you punish the arm? If you learn how to wreck the arm or wreck the incoming leg, not only did you slow something down that he might try to punch you with, but you've also slowed down his ability to block you. So how about if I take out his limbs, and then since he can't stop me now I'll go after his head or his heart or his ribs or whatever. Okay? Stop being in a damn all fire hell bent thing to get at him when he's going to be giving you shit. He can't attack you without surrendering something. He just doesn't see these as targets. He sees it as a weapon. But if it's not going to land and you're out of the way, it's now a target. Okay? We need to think more tactically and strategically and less like freaking caveman thugs. All right? So, all right, where am I? Number five. Oh, this one's terrible. Okay? Learned this, I think, under Shidoshi Malmstrom. I'm going to give credit where credit's due, right? So number 5 is add injury to injury. Not injury to insult. I'm going to add injury to injury. Okay? This is what I talked about earlier. Fight like a demon. Okay? Fight like a demon. What I mean by that is if you hit something and you hurt it, you know you hurt it, right? This guy's now covering it and whatnot. Every chance you get to hit it again, do it. Hit it again. Bump it. Push into it. Whatever, okay? With this uke nagash, right? Maybe I back out of the way. I hit the back of his hand. I crack those bones, right? I'm going to hit it again every chance I get. Or I'm going to grab it, and I'm going to hold on to it. And every time he starts to move toward me, I'm going to go, that's broken. That's broken, right? If I tweak his arm, shoulder, break something or whatever, I hold on to it. That's broken, right? He's going to pass out. He's going to go into shock, and he's going to pass out, okay? So I want to make him pass out from trauma. I want to get him to shut down because his body is now losing an exorbitant amount of energy and strength because of the injury. And why would I go after other things to try to injure something that's not injured yet when he has an injury? Remember Cobra Kai? Sweep the leg. Go after the injured leg. But it's not fair. You're not in a fair fight. You're in a survival attack situation. Stop confusing sport competition, rule-based shit with not going to the hospital, the morgue. Okay? All right. So, just enough time for a bonus. Okay? The bonus I actually planned for, not the other one I just gave you. Okay? So, big bonus lesson. Okay? For those of you who've been around for a while, whether it was through Whiteboard Wednesday, my students or whatever, you know we give you these 5 Ds for effective and strategic self-defense. Okay? Discern, defend, disrupt, deliver, discern, right? It's a framework to know where you are in a fight and be able to strategically control things, right? If I know where I am and I know what phase I'm in and I know how I have him, then I know exactly what to do next. I'm not just throwing shit, okay? Not just grabbing a handful of beans and going, how'd they all fall? Okay? So, but sometimes we don't have time for that, right? It's a surprise. This guy's suddenly on you. He might have already landed one, and your head's still trying to figure out what the hell's going on. Oh, shit, I'm in a fight. Second one's landed, whatever, okay? So it's a surprise attack. So we're going to take a look at three rules for surprise attacks. 3 rules for us. 3 rules or 3 tips for handling surprise attacks. All right. So again, I know I keep beating this, and I know there's so many people that just don't want to believe it. Right. The difference is between a sport contest and a survival situation. Okay? One of those differences, right, is in the staging. Okay. And when I say sport or contest or whatever, this could be high school, this could be the bar on Saturday night or whatever. There's some pushing and shoving, and both guys know that they're in a fight. Okay? Because it was all building, right? Their head's in the game, they're ready to go, right? Same thing when you're training in the dojo, right? You know your partner's going to throw this attack, or if you're sparring, you already know, right? You're in the game. You're already there. Okay? The problem in an attack scenario is he's in the game and you're still in whatever mindset you were in when you walked into the locker room or you got out of your car or whatever, right? So you're thinking about, what am I picking up at the store, or what am I doing next after I get changed and go home, or whatever, just had a good workout, I'm going to jump in the shower, whatever it is, okay? You have to catch up, okay? So there's a huge difference, again, from a stage fight where both people bump gloves, okay, go, right? And you're both there, you're already there, right? And something where there might be a shot or three already landed. You're not down and out. And you have to get through that whole, holy shit, I'm being attacked, before you can go into action. Okay? That has to affect the training. Okay? So these three rules or these three tips is a trimmed down version of the 5 Ds. Okay? And I know, again, it's going to be one of those things where it seems like it's a no shit, sensei. Okay? Hopefully you don't say that to my face, but who knows? I mean, if you're not one of my students, say whatever you want. Okay? With my students, we have a different conversation. One of them includes you not being one of my students. Okay? So anyway, very, very quickly, right? They're going to seem like things, but doing it under pressure while your body's trying to transition from normal state to primitive combat state, and while your head's trying to race and try to figure out what's going on and all that, easier said than done, okay? But that's why we create drills for our students to work through this stuff, okay? So number one, cover as many targets as possible. Cover as many targets as possible, okay? So you want to cover, so which targets are most important, Sensei? Your life-sustaining targets. Okay? What are your life-sustaining targets? Well, let's see, if he has a knife, there's 5 gates we're going to protect. We're going to protect the neck, we're going to protect the insides of the arms and the insides of the legs, including the groin, okay? Because if you get cut or stabbed there, you will leak out really, really quickly, okay? If it's a fight, I want to protect my ribs because if they get cracked and broken, all my life-sustaining internal organs are there. I want to protect my throat and the sides of my neck, right? Those kind of things. I want to protect life-sustaining systems, okay? So just saying I'm going to cover as many targets as possible. Well, no shit, but you can only cover so many because you only have so much, right? So anyway, cover as much as possible, right? I want to pay attention to my surroundings as much as possible. I'm looking for possible escape routes. I'm looking for possible, we call them usable aids on hand. What happens to be there, you can pick this thing up and go, it's just interesting. Bam! Right? That kind of thing, right? So I want to pay attention to see if he's got somebody moving in to help, right? I want to watch for trip hazards and things like that, okay? Again, as much as possible. Priorities here. Say, I'm moving down. I'm moving down because you might not get the number 3. Okay. Priority. Next priority, if it's possible. Last one. We already talked about it. Be an opportunist. Okay. I know I mentioned all these things, but if something pops up in front of your weapon, you can't be overcomplicating this shit. You can't be thinking about, oh, there it is, and I'm gonna hit it with a Shikan cannon. Okay. If something passes in front of the target, boom, you need to be able to hit that thing, right? And if you can, you hit it more than once, right? But be an opportunist because you don't have time for anything else, right? I need to get the hell out of here, or at least create some distance, get my head together, and then we can come back in and use a little bit more logic and stuff, okay? But I want to cover and protect life-sustaining things, right? One of the reasons we have Jumonji this way and not moving around this way, okay, is because not only could the ribs be hit, and the floating ribs, whatever, right? Break off, stab into, spleens over here, liver's here, pancreas is here, your aorta's in behind that, right? But I'm not worried about ribs on that one, right? Because my hands pretty much float that way, right? But this xiphoid process right here at the base of the sternum, okay? It's another one of these early warning things for the body. That snaps off, the heart's right behind it, okay? So we got to be careful, right? You get hit on either side of the neck, hitting the windpipe, that kind of stuff. Shit, it's done very, very quickly. Okay, so let's wrap this up with one final story, right? Kind of summarizes everything. story about a wise grandfather who's got his grandson out and kind of hiking around in the woods, right? And they see this rabbit and wolf go running by, right? Rabbit's darting left and right and all that kind of stuff. And the wolf is, moving on it and stuff, right? And the grandfather looks down and says, who do you think will win? Grandson says, well, the wolf, man, he's bigger, he's faster, he's got ferociousness on his side. And the grandfather says, maybe, but more than likely the rabbit's going to win. Grandson looks up and goes, how's the rabbit going to win? He said, you're thinking about him fighting. He's not fighting, okay? One, the wolf is going after his dinner. The other one is running for his life. Priorities are different. The wolf doesn't catch this one. I know if he doesn't catch them long enough, he'll die of starvation. But our survival mechanisms allow us to go more than like 27 minutes before we pop something else in our face. Same thing with wolves, right? So one guy's racing for a prize and one guy's racing for his life. One's got more of an advantage because he has a bigger incentive. But if we're training where we're both going after the same prize and we have a do-over opportunity later, or maybe I don't make the belt this time, I get the belt next time, or the trophy, and I can talk smack, whatever. The intention's different. Everything is different. Okay? All right, that's it. URL's right there again, right, for our Friday virtual training. We're going to be covering, going through some techniques and some examples for making this stuff work, right? Friday class, 6 p.m. Eastern time, right? So if you go there, you can sign up. There's also some links on that page right under each of the registration buttons that allow you to take a look at the virtual, the NIMPO, what do we call it? The NIMPO Masterclass, right? Where you can get Tuesday and Friday virtual classes all month long. There's also a bonus coaching call with my Inner Circle guys once a month. There's a whole bunch of extra things that we put in there for training wise. Whatever. You can take a look at it, see if it's for you. If not, no harm, no foul. We have all this stuff, right? And I'm sure I'll see you next Wednesday. Right? Be safe, train hard. Hope you got a lot of value out of this. That's it. I'll see you guys later.